This week on Capital Connection, prison workers picket across Illinois.
We had 2 staff go 3 weeks ago to the hospital ER. We had to be Narcaned.
And with just over 2 weeks until Election Day, county clerks across Illinois are taking extra measures to ensure the safety of their poll workers.
We didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. Where unfortunately now, in modern age, you have to take all these into consideration.
And the governor and a caravan of business leaders finished up their trade mission to Japan. Deputy Governor Andy Menard joins the show to break down how the trip went.
I think you're going to see more than we've already done, but you're going to see more not just in the coming months, but if you look at our 5-year plan, you will see a lot of weight put on that.
It's all coming up on Capital Connection.
From the Illinois State Capitol Rotunda, Capitol reporter Cole Hankey is asking the tough questions. This is Capital Connection.
Welcome to Capital Connection. I'm Cole Hankey. This week, IDOC employees from across the state picketed outside of prisons. They are calling for better safety measures to be put in place. And this comes after a number of facilities have seen employees go to the hospital because of apparent drug exposures. Theodora Coulivaris, our Capitol Bureau reporter, has more.
We had 2 staff go 3 weeks ago to the hospital ER. We had to be Narcaned.
Union workers at the state's prisons say some have been exposed to drugs and to other dangerous substances at work.
Every institution statewide is having the same problem.
And they say the main reason it's happening is because of incoming mail to the prisons.
We've put additional PPE on all the housing units. We put Narcan on all the housing units. We're trying to be ready for when the next exposure happens because it's going to happen, unfortunately.
It's why workers across the state are calling for safer working conditions.
You imagine going to work and you don't know if something you handle could kill you, and that is something that has to be addressed, and we need to bring it to light.
That includes employees from Logan Correctional Center in Lincoln. They say the solution to the problem, digital mail.
It's one way to stop the introduction of the drugs. That's the biggest thing. We're trying to stop the drugs coming in.
Because of the concerns, the Department of Corrections says they've taken steps to make changes, including intensifying mail screening protocols and encouraging people to use personal protective equipment. Still, workers say
it's not enough, but we're limping by for right now.
Workers at Logan say it's more than just the exposure they're worried about. The IDOC has talked about closing and relocating Logan Correctional Center closer to the Chicago suburbs, and it has said employees will have to find work elsewhere.
We're already dealing with the staffing shortages, we're dealing with inmate violence, and now we have to deal with, possible closure and relocation on top of that. So morale it's taking a big hit. We're seeing people try to transfer out to get ahead of it.
When we come back, we sit down with the president of the Illinois Association for County Clerks to talk about the threats that are being posed towards election workers, not just here in Illinois, but across the country, and how county clerks' offices are preparing for them. We'll be right back.
You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Now, there are just over 2 weeks until Election Day. And joining us now is Scott Erickson, the Illinois Association of County Clerks president and the Knox County clerk, to talk with us about election workers and their safety at the polls. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
So let's just start right there with that. It's 2024. We've gone through several election cycles over the past, maybe a little bit shorter than a decade. Probably since 2016, we've had a lot of scrutiny on the election process, to put it, I guess, in a nice way. How have you seen this as a veteran of this whole industry, of this whole cycle? How have you seen this change, and how have you changed your perspective on what safety for election workers means?
You make me feel so old with that lead up with that thing. And like back there, we were chiseling votes out on stone tablets. I mean, it's changed a lot since then.
Hey, I didn't put you back to the hanging chad. Okay,
I was in the hanging chad era. My first election that I did in office was a punch card election. So that was crazy. But yeah, no, it is I've been in office 20 years and it has changed so much in just that short amount of time, even though it doesn't sound like it's a short amount of time. But back when I started, we weren't thinking about having to be concerned about stuff being delivered to us in the mail that was tainted with fentanyl or ricin or any of these things, or physical securities or potential attacks on the election process, lighting fires of ballot boxes and drop boxes. We didn't have to worry about any of that stuff. Where unfortunately now in the modern age, we have to take all these into consideration. And my worry factor is quadrupled over these years because there's just so many what ifs that could happen that we've got to be prepared for. If we don't prepare for it, then we guarantee it's going to happen. And then we're in that, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now? And on election day or ramping up to election day or post-election even, we can't be in those modes. We've got to be prepared. We've got to be able to do and handle the situations.
Those just few examples you gave were obviously, it would probably be alarming to somebody who's not privy to how these conversations have been evolving over the past few years. When you bring those up specifically, are those in reference to specific threats maybe a county clerk in Illinois has gotten, or specific threats maybe a county clerk in a different part of the country has gotten, or are those actual events that have taken place, when we're talking about opening up an envelope and having some sort of substance in there, or a fire for that matter?
Yeah, and knock on wood, in Knox County we haven't had any problems, but these are all situations that have occurred in Illinois and also in other states. Election security has been brought to the forefront on the national stage because of those high-level terrorist and threat interests to us. We've now are trying to be careful, be very aware of what our surroundings are, very aware of situations and concerns, and having to take that extra level of precaution. We get notifications all the time about different things that happen. We just got notifications recently about people trying to set fire to the drop boxes, trying to pour liquids or chemicals into things and burn these boxes up. Deliveries of things in the mail. That's actually happened in Illinois, and they've made us aware. So now all the mail comes through for the courthouse comes through my office. We've now had to take extra precautions to handle and process that mail. What normally would take us maybe 15, 20, 30 minutes is now taking us an hour plus because we're gloved up, we're masked up, we're handling all this stuff in preparation for that one what-if moment that happens. And if that one what-if moment happens, holy cow, it could be catastrophic. So just being prepared and trying to figure out the scenarios of what happens if we open up an envelope that's got fentanyl in it in my office. What do we do? How does it affect our voting processes? How does it affect my staff and team?
What has this been like for the workers you have at your polls? I mean, these are people who are doing a civic duty. This isn't the most appealing job in the world. This is a lot of extra time committed to just making sure that this process runs smoothly. And they're not signing up to have to worry about these sort of larger threats. There are areas across Illinois that often have problems recruiting enough election judges or enough poll workers for any given election. I'm curious if you've seen this have an impact on that, or if that's something that as these become more prevalent, you're expecting it to have more of an impact down the road.
It does have an impact. I mean, our election judges are the lifeblood of our organization. We are truly blessed to have a core group of people that are willing to take the time out of their day to serve in this very important diplomatic duty. And a lot of times we listen to their concerns, we listen to their problems and issues. Hey, we had a problem like this at the polling location. These issues, as they become more of a forefront in the public sector, and that's all you're seeing in the news, that's all you're hearing in the reports, and social media is saying all these different things, it does have an adverse effect on people. And say, I don't want to have to deal with a person screaming and yelling at me at the polls about stealing their votes. I don't want to have to deal with a person that's not wanting to do X, Y, or Z that follows the requirements. We're just not going to put up with it. You don't pay me enough to deal with it. So and that hurts us. It hurts the democratic process too, because those people that are working, they're serving as those judges, we could not do elections without them. We've got to have those people in place to be able to do that and safeguard the election process. And scaring these people away or encouraging them to just say, you know what, I put in my 30 years, I'm done, I'm not going to do this anymore. And there's nobody in the ranks to come up to kind of fill those spots. Makes it a difficult solution for us to try to solve.
So we talked about the cybersecurity challenges earlier on, and there is a pretty clear way to push back against that, to build up those walls. It's better technology, better systems, better protections in place. Pushing back against this, how do you go about that, especially when we're seeing skepticism in the electoral process being pushed at the highest levels of politics? How do you go about reaching those people who feel radicalized in whatever way and feel this process is so broken that they need to take this sort of terroristic action against it?
Right. I mean, you don't want to ever have a situation where it pushes someone to take drastic measures in response or become so disenfranchised with the process that they don't want to participate. We need those election judges. We also need the voters to come out and vote as well. So being able to address that situation is troublesome. What I try to push is it's a trust factor. You trusted and entrusted me to take this position as a county clerk and election authority. You voted for me to come into this office. Now I'm going to give you that respect back, and I'm going to be able to ask you to trust me to run those elections smoothly. Being available to answer questions, being able to answer concerns from these voters. Illinois is a great situation where we're a bottom-up type of process. Those election responsibilities and decisions are all made at that ground level. We're on the front lines. We've got that contact with voters. The voters know where I live. They see me at the grocery store. They know at a restaurant, they can come over and talk to me and, hey, I had a question about this. I heard this on the news. What's that? How does that affect us? Having that response and that ability for me to answer that question to them face-to-face, eye-to-eye, and not feed them a line of garbage. This is the truth. This is what we can do. This is what we're planning on doing. It carries a lot of weight. And all of our election authorities in the state are that same way. We're open. We're available to those voters because that's a part of our job. Not only is it to run these elections and run the other duties that we're responsible for, but it's to make sure that those voters feel comfortable going to those polls or comfortable filling out their ballot at home and mailing that in for a vote by mail option. So it's a lot of public response. It's a lot of trust factor on both sides. You got to trust us that we're going to run the elections right, and we trust that if we don't run the election right, you got the opportunity to remove us when our term is over and put somebody else in that you do trust to run these things.
All right, well, Scott Erickson with the Illinois Association for County Clerks, as well as the Knox County Clerk. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it very much. Thank you so much.
You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Governor Pritzker and a huge caravan of business leaders from Illinois went on a trade mission to Japan. Joining us now is Deputy Governor Andy Menard to tell us more about that trip. Deputy Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me back on the show.
So I guess we'll start here. Are you over the jet lag yet?
A little bit. Took me till this week, actually. So there were several days where I woke up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. But as of today, things seem to be back to normal.
Well, there you go. I'm glad to hear that. So this was a 4-day, basically, sprint for one of the larger trading partners for Illinois specifically. And if we can just go into the logistics of a trip like this, how long in advance are these trips being planned out? What does that planning look like? And are you specifically going for specific businesses there, or is this a we're here, who wants to talk to us kind of situation?
Yeah, so there's a lot that goes into it, Cole. So a couple of things. This particular trip took months to plan. There were very specific businesses that are located in Illinois, like Eisen, for example, in southern Illinois, that is in the auto supply parts business, supply chain business, to companies like Mitsubishi and Hitachi that have a presence here in Illinois that the governor wanted to have a face-to-face conversation with because, you can meet over Zoom, you can meet virtually, but particularly with Japanese companies having that face-to-face meeting and putting the governor in that role is incredibly advantageous for the state. So while we were there also, we took the opportunity to introduce the governor to CEOs of companies that we want to bring to Illinois, to establish that relationship again face to face in Tokyo. But all in all, each trip is a little bit different. This one was quite large simply because Japan plays such a huge role in foreign direct investment in Illinois, and foreign direct investment translates to jobs for Illinoisans, and the more direct investment we have from Japanese companies, not just the ones that are here, but the ones that we want to bring here, the more jobs we're going to create, and that was the overarching goal of the trip.
I know a lot of these conversations continue beyond just that trip. It's not like everything's wrapped up in a bow very nicely, but when we're talking about the companies you are looking to attract, are we talking about those areas that Illinois has really been targeting over the past few years, whether it be, data centers, electric vehicles, the like? Is it fair to assume that those are still the target areas on these trips, or does it go broader than that?
So it's very broad, actually, and that's a reflection of our economy in the state. So we're not like other states that have one dominant business that dominates the state economy. We are very diverse, and that translates into conversations with any number of companies in Japan and worldwide, honestly. So while in Japan, we met with companies that are in the quantum space. Obviously, that's been a focus of the governor, and the jobs that promises for the state that's already happening. We met with healthcare companies that are in the pharmaceutical space. Growth potential for Illinois. Obviously, the auto sector has been a focus of the administration on the electrification front and bringing auto supply chain and manufacturing to Illinois. So it's very broad and diverse, but I think that again is a reflection of the relationship we have with Japan. Illinois has a lot to offer. When we go to a foreign country, we've been to Japan, we've been to London, we've been to Germany. That was a very specific company with a very specific meeting. People learn about Illinois, and they understand Illinois is an economic powerhouse in the middle of the country. There's a lot of focus on the coasts, obviously, but the governor has made it his mission to tell the story of the state, which is a good story. It's a story of economic growth. It's a story of investment that returns for a company. And we start with this. We start with workforce. Our workforce is second to none. And we will put our workforce up against anybody's in the world. And when companies hear that and you bring those things together, nobody does it better than the governor. But when you bring those things together, there is a good conversation. So I have no doubt. We already had the one announcement while we were in Japan with the company that is in medical equipment business, 110 new jobs. But there will be subsequent announcements, I'm confident. But that relationship building is the first step.
I'm ashamed that I didn't say quantum when I was rattling off those priorities. I'm surprised the governor didn't appear right behind
the banner.
Yeah,
right.
for that one. But I'm curious with this entire conversation of advertising Illinois in that way. How does that work from your perspective, from the governor's perspective, when you're obviously advertising the state, but at the same time you also are operating under the federal government structure that you don't really have that control over directly?
Sure. And I think that's another reason why the administration has taken such an aggressive approach, because really when foreign-based companies, that do significant business in the United States, they understand that states are different. They understand, for example, that workforce in Illinois is very different than workforce in Missouri, for example, or very different than workforce in Kentucky. We have different skill sets. We have different education institutions that can meet needs of companies. So I think one thing that has changed in recent years is foreign direct investment is very much driven by those specific conversations about what a state has to offer. And when you look at Illinois and you compare our state, which we love, which we get up every day and try to do good things in the administration and continue the good work that's been accomplished. When we tell the story of the state, it is a good product to sell to to companies, not just around the world, but in the United States. And we have any number of examples to show how those conversations have produced new jobs and retained jobs in the state that were in danger of leaving.
There were dozens of people that went on this trade mission. This was not just yourself and the governor by any means. What is that? First of all, is that also meant to be almost like a show of force, a show of unity in that way when going to these different countries? And also, are we seeing these businesses or these business leaders kind of tag along and then split off on their own adventures and split up in that way?
Yeah, all of the above, and everything is deliberate. So, for example, the value of having CEOs from Illinois accompany the governor to Japan is twofold. Number one, business-to-business conversations sometimes make more sense than government-to-business conversations. So we do our research. We try to best understand the audience that we want to talk to. So business-to-business conversations make sense.
Can you give us a sneak peek to where the next trade mission is, or can that not be announced yet?
Yeah, no. So we're, I appreciate you asking this because this underscores the importance of this to the governor and to the administration, that we're constantly looking for how do we bring more growth to Illinois. The governor has leaned heavily into agriculture and the importance of agriculture to the statewide economy, not just in downstate where it's obvious, but in the ag sector for research and development, life sciences, bioengineering, all of those things. That's ag-based. I think you're going to see more than we've already done, but you're going to see more not just in the coming months, but if you look at our 5-year plan, you will see a lot of weight put on that. So I think you'll see more of that in the coming months.
All right. Well, Deputy Governor Andy Menard, thank you so much for joining us today.
You bet. Thank you.
We'll be right back.
You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
That will do it for us on this week's episode of Capital Connection. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again next week for more coverage of the upcoming election. For Capital Connection, I'm Cole Haney.